Do you do anything in particular besides your spiritual practice, as far as like anything that strengthens this system?
You mean in terms of physical
Yes,
practices?
yes.
Well, yeah, and perhaps we'll get into that in a later interview in terms of doing yoga postures
Mm.
and other internal physical maneuvers called mudras and bandhas,
Aha.
all of which are compatible with spinal breathing and meditation, and we
Aha.
fold those in as we get a little further along.
Yes.
Some people may come to these practices already having a familiarity with yoga postures because they're very widely available, and many people find their way into yoga through postures, and that's fine. Just to quickly say, postures are something we would do before spinal breathing. So we would do our postures, our pranayama, and our meditation like that in that
Yes.
order. Get into that later on, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
Incidentally, obviously keeping the body in good physical condition is important also. So, good exercise, good rest, as healthy a diet as we might be drawn to. All of these things are important.
Mm-hmm. Good. Would you specify vegetarian or non-vegetarian? Does it matter?
It depends on the person. I think it's really a matter of personal choice. You don't have to be a vegetarian to get good benefit from these practices.
Okay.
But if you are doing these practices, meditation in particular, you may find yourself being drawn to a lighter, more nutritious type of diet. Less trips to the fast food joint.
Yeah, or no trips.
But I'm not going to tell anybody that they have to do that or not do that. It really comes from within, and that's why we use the phrase in the sign-off of all of our lessons, the guru is in you.
Yeah.
It really is true. When you begin to develop this inner silence and the movement of the energy in the nervous system that spinal breathing begins to add, you become much more wise within, and this affects our actions.
And the automatic yoga, I think, also helps to push you and guide you into the right direction. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, the lurching and the jumping you mentioned is sort of the beginning of that, but we can also experience other things in terms of physical postures and so on during our practices in particular, and like with any other energy moving, we just go back and favor our practice. We don't go and do automatic yoga and abandon the practice that we're doing. We always favor the practice we're doing over experiences, including automatic yoga. But automatic yoga is really a confirmation of purification and opening going on. If we're sitting and doing our spinal breathing and all of a sudden we find our head going down, or we're leaning forward, or our head's going back, or we're moving this way or that way, our body is accommodating the energy in a way that will allow it to flow in the most purifying way. And that's what we mean by automatic yoga. But we don't favor those things when they happen. We favor the procedure of the practice.
I was thinking more on with the automatic yoga when we automatically, I thought it was, that's how I interpreted it, we become more drawn to a certain lifestyle because of what's going on within.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess you could term that automatic yoga too. In other words, favoring a lighter diet,
Yes.
maybe keeping better company,
Yeah.
not being inclined to have that cocktail.
Right.
Yeah, those are all automatic things too. We participate in those choices, but we don't feel the need.
Yes.
For the things that we may have been doing before that may have not been good for our health and well-being. So yeah, that's an aspect of automatic yoga too.
Yeah, so
definitely.
For those listeners who already have a meditation program and they've been doing it for a while, they're hearing about spinal breathing, would you recommend that they could add this to their practice, or should they really go into the deep meditation practice?
Well, it really depends, and this gets into an area that I get asked about a lot. It's like, well, how about if I add this practice to my other practice I'm doing over here? And it's hard for me to predict what the result of that might be because I don't know what the other person may be practicing. It certainly is possible for something like spinal breathing to be a good complement to other forms of meditation, like, for example, Buddhist mindfulness type meditation or whatever. And the only thing I can say is everyone should follow their own inclinations. If you're mixing practices from different systems together, it's really sort of your experiment, which doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that I can't predict what the result will be necessarily. As a general caution, I would say not to do too many different kinds of pranayama in one session or one day, because if you do 5 or 10 minutes of AYP spinal breathing, and then you're doing like 30 minutes of some other kind of pranayama from another system, the effects of those practices will be cumulative, and the effects can be delayed. But there can be an excessive energy flows, discomfort, overdoing. So I would just caution not to be doing too many different kinds of pranayama in the same session.
That's interesting, because sometimes I do Kundalini yoga practice. There's a lot of pranayama in that class. We actually did like 15 minutes of really deep, intense breathing. I was wondering if I would feel anything. I didn't feel anything immediately, but I must say about 2 days later I had mood swings, and I'm wondering if...
Yep. That's something about pranayama that everybody needs to be aware of, that if you do a long session or you're doing multiple methods, or gee, it feels good, I'm going to do more of this today, there very often can be a delayed effect. It can be a few days later, it can even be a few weeks later.
Really?
Sometimes months later. So it's very important to keep a balance in practice. And if you begin combining things together, just be mindful that all forms of pranayama have similar effects. So you don't want to, I call it doubling up.
Yes.
You don't want to be doubling up on your practices, because you'll pay later.
Yeah, good to know. Next time I do the class, I'll just do the yoga and not the breath part.
Well, either that or do the breath part and maybe skip your other pranayama for that day.
Okay. That's good.
Another thing that should be mentioned is the more advanced we become with these practices, the more sensitive we become to the practices. So as strange as it may sound, advanced practitioners may actually do less than beginning practitioners, because they're so sensitive. And this is part of the whole art of self-pacing that we discuss so much in the AYP lessons on the website, which, by the way, is aypsite.org, aypsite.org.